الحمد لله وكفى والصلاة والسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى خصوصا على أفضلهم وخاتم النبيين محمد الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Brother Chairman, distinguished guests, brothers and sisters and students, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I have come to you this morning with a bit of the flu and a little bit of the cough. So I have my black seed and honey here to sip, and I hope you will bear with me this morning as we address the subject of Surah Kahf and the modern age. Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam is reported to have said, every prophet has warned his people about Dajjal. And the Prophet Nuh alayhi salam warned his people about Dajjal. Now listen carefully. But I am going to tell you something that no one ever said before me. No one ever said this before me. This is absolutely new information about Dajjal, about the Antichrist. What is it that is so important that it has come with the very last prophet? No one after him. What is it about Dajjal that is so important that no one ever spoke of it before me? What is it? Do not treat the subject lightly. No. Take your time with it. Dajjal sees with his left eye. He is blind in the right eye. It looks like a bulging grip. But your Lord is not one-eyed. Between his eyes, on his forehead, is written the word kafara, kafir. And every mu'min is the one who has not only what's it around? The mu'min is the one who has not only made the declaration of belief with the lips, Islam, but in addition, it has traveled until it has entered the heart. So now he has Iman, so he is mu'min. Every mu'min would be able to read the word kafir, whether he is katib or ghayru katib, whether he is literate or illiterate. He can read and write or cannot read and write. This is what was saved until the last. And in this hadith, there is the key, the most important key of all for the study of Akhirul Zaman. If you miss this one, you miss methodology. And you'll end up joining ISIS and fighting a bogus jihad with Yankee money and weapons from NATO and with Qarnu Shaitan from Najd behind you supporting you. As you fought a bogus jihad in Libya. My words are bitter, yes. And then you're fighting a bogus jihad in Syria. And now you're telling us, you're bringing us the Khilafah. So that CNN and Al Jazeera and television stations around the world can go to work to present Islam in the worst possible image, to show Islam as a menace to mankind, so that Israel can wage the big war that Israel wants to wage, while appearing to be a savior to mankind. If you miss this one, and you adopt the wrong methodology, you end up with ISIS and supporting ISIS. So what is there in this hadith? That he sees with the left eye, but he's blind in the right eye. One day, Dajjal will have to appear in human form. The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, he would be a Jew. He would be a young man. He would be powerfully built. He'd have the curls of the Orthodox Jews. And he will stand up in Jerusalem and declare, I am Al-Masih, the Messiah. When you study the subject, as we have been studying the subject, you know that day is not too far from now. I may not live to see it, but you will live to see it. That's how close it is. But if you use the wrong methodology, then when he stands up there in Jerusalem and he says, I am the Messiah, Al-Masih, and we say this is Dajjal, you will say, no, he cannot be Dajjal, because he sees with two eyes. And the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, Dajjal sees with one eye. You are misled because you adopted the wrong methodology. That's why you end up supporting ISIS and the bogus Khilafah. What is the right methodology? How is it that the mu'min can read? Whether he is katib or ghayru katib, he can still read kafir. But Abu Jahl cannot read, and George Bush cannot read, and this other one named Osama or Obama cannot read. How come they can't read? How come the think tanks in Washington cannot read? But the one who has faith can read. Huh? Maybe we should send Abu Jahl to the eye specialist Check out his eyes. How come he can't read? But the report comes back from the eye specialist that his eyes are okay. Still he cannot read. But this one can read. Will you not think before you support ISIS? Did Allah not send this Quran لِقَوْمِ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ? Did Allah not send this Quran to a people who think? Why have we stopped thinking? Is it because the one who has faith is not reading with these eyes alone? Is it that in addition to these eyes, we have other ways of seeing? This is called epistemology, the branch of knowledge which studies knowledge. They don't teach it in the universities anymore. How do we acquire knowledge? The scientific method is that knowledge comes from external observation and experimentation and rational inquiry. And the scientific method says, wrongly so, that if knowledge comes from any other source, it's not knowledge. It belongs to Disneyland. But the Quran says otherwise. How I wish the Quran could be studied. How I wish that the Quran could be taught in universities. We'd have a different world today if we would teach the Quran. The Quran tells us, فَإِنَّهَا لَا تَعْمَى الْأَبْصَارِ. It's not these eyes which are blind. وَلَكِنْ تَعْمَى الْقُلُوبُ الَّتِي فِي الصُّدُورِ. What is blind is the heart which is inside the chest. So that the Quran gives us a different epistemology, that we see with external sight, and we also see with internal sight. And so now we can subject the hadith to something called ta'wil. Ta'wil. Tafsir is to explain. Ta'wil is to interpret. And we have to talk today about ta'wil. And when we talk on ta'wil, we go to the Quran, not to the hadith, to the Quran. So the one who has faith can read because he's seeing with the internal eye. And the one who is Abu Jahl cannot read because he is internally blind. And so now we can explain the hadith the way, excuse me, the Salafi cannot do it. I have not come to USM with boxing gloves to take on the Salafi. No. Mine is a learned and a respectful response to a challenge from the Salafi. And I expect that he would respond to me in like ways. The ta'weel or the interpretation is that when Dajjal sees with the left eye, it symbolizes external sight, knowledge that is externally acquired. And when Dajjal is blind in the right eye, it symbolizes internal blindness. And all those who follow Dajjal will be internally blind. How then can we ensure that we are not internally blind? The heart can see only when the heart has faith. And you cannot fool Allah. وَعَلَّمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَحُولُ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَقَلْبِهِ. Be conscious of the fact that Allah hovers between a man and his heart. Be conscious of the fact that Allah hovers between a man and his heart. So Allah knows whether this heart is worshipping Him or worshipping the dunya. And that's why Surah Kahf gave us the story of the rich man and the poor man. The rich man worshipped his two gardens. With his lips he says, I worship Allah. But with his heart he worshipped his wealth. And he believed that because he was rich, he is superior. So he is looking down at the poor. And the poor man is warning him, be careful. You should say, Ma sha Allah, for what Allah has given to you. Because Allah can take it away from you. It's tomorrow, see what's going to happen to the United States. Just watch and wait and see. And Allah can give me better than what you have. And so said, so done. Allah withdrew the water, and the gardens were all destroyed. And guess what he said? The rich man, Ya laytani lam ushrik bi rabbi ahada. Ya laytani lam ushrik bi rabbi ahada. Woe unto me that I have committed this act of shirk. With the lips you say you worship Allah, but the heart worships elsewhere. So Allah hovers between a man and his heart. And Allah knows whether or not this heart is faithful. When the heart is faithful to Allah, and there is faith in the heart, then Allah will put nur in the heart. And when there is nur in the heart, then the heart can see. Without that nur in the heart, no scholarship, not even a PhD from Al-Azhar University, no scholarship, none, can penetrate ilmu akhirul zaman. Be warned about that. There are two kinds of verses in the Quran. Let us now turn to the serious part of this subject. There are two kinds of verses in the Quran. This is at the beginning of Surah Al-Imran. Allah speaks about ayat muhkamat, verses which are plain and clear. You don't need any interpretation, plain and clear. And these are the Ummul Kitab, the very heart of the Quran is there. So you have no excuse. You have no excuse. The heart of the Quran is plain and clear, like daylight. But Allah, in His wisdom, and Washington is very angry about it, very angry, that Allah should put into the Quran a second kind of verse. What is it? He calls it ayat mutashabihat. And we spoke briefly about it last night. What are ayat mutashabihat? Answer: these are verses of the Quran which have to be subjected to ta'wil, interpretation. Like the left eye and the right eye. And so ta'wil is a part of methodology for study and understanding of the Quran. Ta'wil is an integral part of methodology for studying the Quran. Because you cannot understand and penetrate the ayat mutashabihat without ta'wil or interpretation. Now the words of the Quran came down with Jibreel alayhi salam to the heart of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And he would then dictate, and the scribes would record. And he would ask them to recite, and he would confirm it's correct. But the punctuation did not come from above. No. We put in the punctuation ourselves. Where do you put a full stop is very important. So somebody put a full stop. And that is the worst full stop in the whole history of full stops. That when Allah says, no one knows the meaning of ayat mutashabihat except Allah, full stop. The worst full stop in the history of full stops is this one. No one knows the meaning of ayat mutashabihat except Allah, full stop. Because of that full stop, the implication is that Allah sent down a book and appointed a teacher to teach the book. And the teacher knows only part of the book, and the other part the teacher does not know. Does that sound to you sensible or foolish? How come you're so quiet this morning? Is Allah a wise God? How can a wise God send a book and appoint a teacher to teach the book, and the teacher does not know the meaning of part of the book? That full stop is the most wicked full stop in the history of full stops. So let us take it and throw it away. Unfortunately, the full stop is there. So we have to take it and throw it away. The full stop did not come with Jibreel alayhi salam. What the Quran is saying is that no one knows the meaning of the ayat mutashabihat except Allah and rasikhuna fil ilm. Those who are serious scholars, firmly grounded in knowledge, not schoolboys. The schoolboy will say, no, he cannot be Dajjal because he sees with two eyes. That's the schoolboy. The one who is firmly grounded in knowledge, he is the one with Allah's guidance who will be able to penetrate this part of the Quran, the ayat mutashabihat. And ilmu akhir zaman is in ayat mutashabihat. So you cannot study this subject only with the rational faculty. Let me warn you, this is the most important branch of knowledge in Islam at this time. And you cannot study ayat, the ilmu akhir zaman, with only the rational faculty. You need more than that. Musa alayhi salam is in Sinai, and he gives a khutbah. One of Banu Israel comes to him and says, what a fine khutbah. You must be the most learned man in the world. And Musa alayhi salam replies, and of course, it is not Musa who is speaking, no. Allah is using Musa to represent the people who follow him, who think that they are the chosen people of Allah. Heaven is reserved for them. They are the elite of mankind. They are the intellectual and spiritual leaders of mankind. And all the rest of mankind are like cockroaches. So he says, yes, I am the most learned of all men on behalf of his people. Does not recognize Allah as the most learned. And Allah says to him, no, you are not the most learned. There's one more learned than you are. He says, I want to meet him. And anyone who is humble, intellectually humble, not arrogant, would always want to meet the one who is more learned, to learn from him. So Allah says you will meet him at a particular place. You'll meet him at Majma'ul Bahrain. Majma'ul Bahrain, at the place where the two oceans meet. The one with the schoolboy methodology will think about Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean. So maybe I should go to Table Mountains in Cape Town, and there I'll see the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. Now, Imam Baydawi is the only mufassir of the Quran to have said, no, you'll meet me, you will meet the most learned of all men, the man who is the scholar par excellence of Akhirul Zaman, the one with the proper methodology. You will meet him at Majma'ul Bahrain. You will meet him at the place where the two oceans meet. What are the two oceans? The answer the ocean of knowledge externally acquired, and the ocean of knowledge internally received. And when these two oceans of knowledge have been harmoniously integrated, that is where you'll meet the most learned of all men. So now take a fish, ikan. Take a fish. I don't know if it's ikan goreng or ikan bakar. Take a fish, put it in a basket, and go in search of Majma' al-Bahrain. When the fish jumps out of the basket and makes its way into the water, there you'll meet him. You know what this story is saying? It's saying you have to be humble. You were just saying, I am the most learned of all men. And now you have to take a fish, put it in a basket, and wait for the fish to jump out of the basket. This is to make you humble. If you are proud and arrogant, if you believe you are the elite of mankind, heaven is reserved for you. The rest of mankind are like cockroaches. You will never, ever get true knowledge. You have to be humble. You cannot pick up a boxing glove for your teacher, constantly fighting with your teacher. Not if you want to study this subject. You have to be humble. So Musa alayhi salam goes off in search of Majma' al-Bahrain, and he takes the fish and he puts it in the basket, and he takes a young man with him. And welcome to Surah Kahf. While they were traveling, they came to a rock. And they rested for a while at the rock. And Musa alayhi salam fell asleep. When they woke up, they continued their journey. Now listen carefully, because you are young. As they go past the rock, something is different now. Before the rock, they were moving. But after the rock, لَقَدْ لَكِينَا مِنْ سَفَرِنَا هَذَا نَصَبًا. The journey has now become difficult, wearisome, tiresome. I wish I knew the Bahasa language so I could explain to you in Bahasa. It's a difficult journey now. Take out the food, let's eat. Because this journey has become wearisome, tiresome, difficult, not like before. Surah Al-Kahf is sending a message to you in Akhirul Zaman, that if in your heart there is love for Allah, and if you are searching for that way of life that will give you sukoon in your heart, you are not being fooled by the shopping malls that glitter in Tinsel Town. They don't hold any attraction for you, not the shopping malls. Your heart hungers for something else. Your heart is hungering for sukoon, for peace in this dunya. And you can't get it. Life is wearisome. Life is tiresome. Surah Al-Kahf is saying, turn around, go back, go search for the rock. Turn around, go back, you've missed the rock. That was when the young man said, oh, I forgot to tell you that when we stopped at the rock, the fish jumped out of the basket and the fish made its way into the water in a wondrous way. And Allah says, no, he did not forget. Shaitan caused him to forget. So all of us will forget. Imran also forgets, and you will forget. And when you forget, and Allah causes you to remember, you must now turn to Allah and ask Him to guide you to that which is better. So Musa alayhi salam said, that's what we were looking for. Let's hurry back to the rock. And when they returned to the rock, they found a man sitting on the rock. Musa alayhi salam realized this is the most learned man of all in the world. And we mean no offense at all to our sisters, because each one of us has a mother. Our mother is a woman, yes. We came from a woman. Without a woman, none of us would be here. None of us would be here without a woman. But the man who is sitting on the rock is always a man, not a woman. This is the most learned of all men. So Musa alayhi salam greets him with salams. Assalamu alaikum. The man responds and says, what? A greeting like that? In a place like this? Who are you? He says, I am Musa. Oh, which Musa are you? Are you the Musa of Banu Israel, that Musa? Are you the Musa of Banu Israel, that Musa? Indicating that he does not belong to Banu Israel. If he belonged to Banu Israel, he'd say, welcome, our Musa. You are our Musa, because he is Banu Israel. He doesn't say so. He says, which Musa? Are you the Musa of Banu Israel? So he is not Banu Israel. Surah Al-Kahf is sending a message to the Jews that you're not the most learned of all in the world. No. There's one more learned than you are. You better humble yourself and come to him for knowledge. So Musa alayhi salam says, yes, I am that Musa. In that case, look at wisdom. In that case, this is the most learned of all men speaking. In that case, Allah has given to you knowledge that I don't have. And Allah has given to me knowledge that you don't have. No matter how learned you are, you must always be ready to learn from others. No matter how learned you are, you must always be ready to learn from others. And when you teach to others, do it with humility. Now, why is he sitting on a rock? Why is he sitting on a rock? This is religious symbolism. And you must have insight, basira, to understand the symbolism. He's sitting on a rock because he's not sitting on shifting sand. He's not the kind of man who any direction the wind blows, he has to turn in that direction. So when Washington says one thing, suddenly you see him change and he's following the way of Washington. And then Washington changes, says another thing, and suddenly you see the scholar of Islam changing, turning that way now. Why? He doesn't want to be called a terrorist. He doesn't want his name on any no-fly list. No. So he has to turn with the wind. But not this man. He sits on a rock because he is firm. Firm in his views. He speaks without fear. He does not speak to please the people. He speaks to please his Lord. And if the people are happy, alhamdulillah. And if they are not, then that's just too bad. If he has to be one voice and one voice alone in the world, he will not change his mind. That is what it means to sit on a rock. He got a backbone made of steel, not a backbone made of recycled paper. So my daughters, when you look for a husband, find a boy, find a man who has a backbone made of steel, not one with a backbone made of recycled paper. And so Musa alayhi salam says to him, I want to follow you so I can learn from what Allah has given to you. The teacher of Akhirul Zaman is Khidr. Khidr means green. He is the only teacher of Akhirul Zaman, because only he has the right methodology. How did he get the name green? The Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wasallam, that he came to a land which was barren, dry. And he sat down and everything became green. Like Malaysia, green. The implication being that this is not a man who memorizes this kitab and then memorizes that kitab and memorizes that kitab and then spends the rest of his life like a machine repeating what he's memorized. No. This is a man whose knowledge is like the rain. Raindrops. That when he speaks, it's like raindrops falling on the dead earth. And it comes back to life, and everything is green. So when he speaks, the dead hearts come back to life. And the dead hearts now begin to vibrate in worship of Allah. This is Khidr. How did he get this kind of knowledge? Allah introduces him and says about him two things. And listen carefully. Two things about his scholarship. Two things. آتيناه رحمة من عندنا وعلمناه من لدنا علما. I gave him kindness. I gave him kindness. I gave him kindness. He's kind. He's compassionate. And I gave him knowledge directly from myself. Two things. You cannot have the knowledge alone. You must also be kind. Kindness must be there in every single particle of your body. The way you speak, the way you behave, your capacity to be forgiving and merciful, your capacity to be charitable and kind. And in addition to that, وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا, Allah gave him knowledge directly from Allah. And we call that spiritual insight, internal, intuitive, spiritual insight. That's why Washington is so angry, because they can't get it. How important is this spiritual insight? Before we get the answer, Musa says, I want to follow you so I can learn from you. Before Khidr responds to him, let us step back a little. How important is this? وَعَلَّمْنَاهُ مِن لَدُنَّا عِلْمًا. This is back to methodology. Only the rasikhuna fil ilm can understand and penetrate the mutashabihat. What is their secret? The answer is, they say, كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. The whole of the Quran is from my Lord. So if you want to understand the part, you got to study the whole. You got to take all the verses of the Quran pertaining to a subject. Like, for example, what happened to him when they attempted to crucify him. And then they boasted, Inna qatalna al-Masiha Isa ibn Maryam Rasulallah. We've killed him. The Messiah, the son of Mary, the messenger of Allah, we've killed him. If you want to penetrate this subject, which is mutashabihat, you got to get the totality of the data in the Quran, all of it. And then you got to bind them together to make a harmonious whole. Because nothing is contradictory in the Quran. Nothing. No verse of the Quran cancels another verse. No verse of the Quran cancels or abrogates another verse. Everything in the Quran is harmonious. I know the questions you're going to have afterwards to pose at me. Everything in the Quran is harmonious. So you've got to be able to bind them together. My teacher of blessed memory calls it the system of meaning of the Quran. My teacher, Maulana Dr. Fadlur Rahman Ansari, rahimahullah, he said, look at the stars in the sky. I mentioned this last night. To the untrained eye, they're just beautiful. The stars in the sky, they're just beautiful. They twinkle. But to the navigator on a ship in the ocean, he must be able to read the stars. The stars are not just there to twinkle beautifully. No! Allah says in the Quran, وَلَقَدْ زَيَّنَ السَّمَاءَ الدُّنْيَا بِمَصَابِحِ. Masabih, plural of misbah, lamp. He says that the stars are there to function as lamps. A lamp is something that allows you to see. And so the stars are there to allow you to navigate the ship. But you have to be able to understand the relationship between the stars, which make them a harmonious whole. This is not for schoolboys. No, this is for scholars. To take all the verses of the Quran and bind them together on a particular subject to make a harmonious whole. In other words, if you forget everything else, remember these words. As a scholar, you have to be able to connect the dots. Connect the dots. When you learn to connect the dots with the stars, you can navigate a ship. When you learn to connect the dots in the Quran, you'll be able to understand the mutashabihat. When you learn to connect the dots of history, you will understand that Pax Britannica did not emerge by accident. No. Pax Britannica came into being for a particular reason. But only eschatology can explain it. Oxford University cannot do it. Cambridge cannot do it. The Sorbonne cannot do it. Harvard cannot do it. Yale cannot do it. MIT cannot do it. Only eschatology can do it. Pax Britannica did not come into being by accident. And the sterling pound did not emerge as the international currency by accident. And Pax Americana did not replace Pax Britannica by accident. And the US dollar did not replace the sterling pound by accident. When you learn to connect the dots of history, you will understand the historical process, as no university can teach you. And so spiritual insight, that is the key for connecting the dots. But the one who has pride and arrogance, I am the elite, how could he do it? Will Allah give him nur? So Musa alayhi salam says, I want to follow you so I can learn from you what Allah gave to you. Listen to the answer. Listen to the answer. Khidr alayhi salam replies and says, إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. You cannot show patience with me in what I have to teach. How can you bear with patience that which lies beyond your capacity to comprehend? Because you are one-eyed. إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا وَكَيْفَ تَصْبِرُ عَلَى مَا لَمْ تُحِطْ بِهِ خُبْرًا. These are the two most important ayat in the epistemology of the Quran. So when you become a student of such a teacher, when you find your khidr, I am now an old man, tomorrow I'll be in my grave, but you are young, and you're going to be searching for your khidr, the scholar who is the only one who can be a guide in Akhir Zaman. Remember to be humble. Don't go with boxing gloves. Don't go challenging him. Be patient with him until he explains to you your khidr. So Musa said, I promise you, I will be patient. Okay, I accept you. You can come along, but on one condition. Don't ask any questions. Teachers don't behave like this. Which normal teacher speaks like that? Huh? How could a teacher tell the student, don't ask any questions? This is not a normal teacher. This is khidr. And this is the price you will have to pay if you want to study ilmu akhirul zaman. So he promises he will not ask any questions. And then they travel, and then there's the boat, and there's the boy, and then there's the wall. I don't have to tell you, you all know. I have this book, which is the Tafsir, Surah Kahf, the text, translation, and commentary, which is the whole surah. And I have this one, which is Surah Kahf in the modern age, which is the ta'wil of the surah. I have this one, which is on Ya'juj and Ma'juj, which is the third book on Surah Kahf. I have one more to write and make dua that I can write it on Dajjal, then the quartet will be finished. You must not ask any questions, and then three events occur. And on each occasion, Musa alayhi salam delivers judgment, and his judgment is wrong. His judgment is wrong because he does not have a full knowledge of the subject. His judgment is wrong because he does not have a full knowledge of the subject. He's only seeing a part of it. Like today we now have pipe-borne water. Huh? And everybody performing the wudu with the pipe-borne water. And everybody performing the wudu of Gog and Magog. And everybody have abandoned the wudu of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. They don't understand. A trap was set for them. And they walked into the trap. And they're performing a disgraceful wudu. That's the wudu they're performing. And with that wudu, they want to perform salat. And then they come to teach you Islam. And they cannot even perform wudu. So you have a partial understanding and you make the mistake. That's what happened to Musa, alayhi salam. Or, I didn't want to say it last night, but let me say it now. I hope I don't spoil your lunch. You cannot get nur without water. You cannot get nur without water. Water is the road to nur. Water. And if you disrespect water, forget it. No nur for you. You cannot waste water and still expect to get nur. And that's what you do when you make wudu now. Do you think the American Indians who lived in America before the devil came to take over America? The devil came from Europe to take over America. The American Indians, and there is a stream of water, and there are fish in the water, and the fish is food, and he is so good, he can take a spear and catch a fish. And he wants to urinate, he wants to pass water. Do you think an American Indian will go and urinate in the river? How come you're so quiet? What's wrong with you, so quiet? No. An American Indian will show respect for water. He will not urinate into water. He will not pass his stool into water. Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam would dig a hole and put the stool there and cover it. And that's the best way, up to this day, the best way. Because it can then decompose because of oxygen and become fertilizer. But we have our PhDs. We belong to the age of progress and knowledge. So we do it in something called a WC. Yeah. We urinate into water. And Allah says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. Even if it be an evil deed as small as a weight of an ant, you're going to have to answer for it. Urinating into water? Nobody ever did that before. Dajjal came along with his WC toilet. And then defecating, putting the stool into water so it cannot decompose anymore. No, there's no oxygen in the water. And then it goes through a sewage system. And where it is pumped, it's pumped into the lakes and into the rivers and to the coastal waters, contaminating the lakes and the rivers and the coastal water. This is the modern age. And the fish eat it. And then we buy the fish and it's, mashallah, ikan bakar. So you're only seeing a part of the subject and you make wrong judgment. And Musa did it 3 times. Khidr alayhi salam, because he has full knowledge, he can see what Musa cannot see. And believe you me, we have plenty blind people in the world today. Believe you me, we actually have people in the world today with the knowledge of cattle, that you could take a piece of paper, put a picture on it, put a number on it, and give it a fictitious value. And it becomes money, and even your central bank don't have 5 ringgits worth of knowledge and intelligence. to understand this is bogus, this is fraudulent, this is utterly haram. And Imran Hosein could talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. It makes no difference. It makes no difference. If you had a little bit of sense, you'll understand that Israel is not so stupid as you are. That tomorrow Israel is going to bring gold and silver as money, while you stupid, foolish Muslims still remain following the enemies of Islam with this bogus money. Israel is going to bring gold and silver tomorrow as money. I hope I don't live to see that day, because the shame and the embarrassment will be too great for me. My ummah, the ummah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and you cannot even recognize this as bogus and fraudulent, as haram. Where are the scholars of Islam? Musa alayhi salam does not have the full knowledge. Khidr has the full knowledge. And so Khidr is able to explain the boat, the boy, and the wall. I want to end with a little bit of ta'weel on all three. In the case of the boat, he damaged it because he knows that something is coming and they're going to lose their property. And by damaging it, he saved the boat. So when you have knowledge which comes directly from Allah, you are able to anticipate what is coming. My critics, and they have no other job in the world other than to criticize Imran Hosein. No, his books must not be in our bookshop. No, he must not be invited to come and lecture. Protestant Islam. When you have the knowledge that comes directly from Allah, when Allah blesses you with that insight, you are able to look ahead and you can see events which are about to occur. Like, for example, I mentioned last night that nuclear war is coming. Nuclear war is around the corner between United States and NATO on the one hand and Russia and China on the other. There'll only be one nuclear war in history. Only one. Can't be two. Huh? That nuclear war is coming. And they want it sooner rather than later, because the longer they wait, the stronger will Russia become. I was of the opinion that perhaps the nuclear war would be 5 or 10 years from now. And then I went to attend a conference in Iran in September, a conference of independent thinkers. And on the first night that I was there, I had two dreams, one after the other. And in both the dreams, I saw nuclear war. I saw the missiles being shot into the sky. And I saw that Pakistan was a part of the nuclear war. The Christians call it Armageddon. The Prophet ﷺ called it Malhama. Would it not be of benefit if we are able to anticipate that nuclear war is coming? And what can we do to prepare for it? Yes, only Allah knows the future. You don't have to tell me that. But Allah can, if He wishes, convey knowledge to those whom He chooses. And so with the methodology of Khidr alayhi salam, you can look into the future and see that a king is coming to seize the boats. And by damaging the boat, he saves the boat. Similarly, today we know the US dollar is going to collapse, probably with the nuclear war. I don't think it will collapse before that, but I can be wrong. And when the US dollar collapses, all the paper money in the world will go with it, including your ringgit. Their plan is to have one universal currency, one for all of mankind. And it will be invisible electronic money. And if we are so stupid to accept the paper money, will we be so stupid to accept the electronic money as well? When we should be returning to dinar and dirham? So, when you have internal, intuitive, spiritual insight, and you study Surah Kahf of the Quran, you're able to anticipate what is coming. Number two, the boy. And he killed the boy because he knew that this boy was going to grow up to join ISIS and go fight the bogus jihad and become a threat not only to his parents but to the whole ummah. You can see ahead. But now look at something else. The wall. And the wall is collapsing. And he rebuilds the wall. And Musa cannot understand why he's rebuilding the wall amongst the people who would not offer any hospitality. The answer is because of the knowledge which comes from him, he could not only look into the future, he could also look into the past and reinterpret history. That there is a treasure underneath the wall. It belongs to two orphans. And Allah wants that these orphans should grow up and get the treasure that their father left for them. So when you have this knowledge which comes directly from Allah, you're not only able to look into the future and anticipate what is coming, you're also able to look back into the past and connect the dots of history and recognize the dot that connects Pax Britannica with Pax Americana, with Pax Judaica, which is around the corner. And you'll understand, therefore, the movement of history. And you'll be able to anticipate how much time is there left before the Malhama. And then when the Malhama takes place, what comes after that? The conquest of, help me somebody. Come on, help me somebody. After the Malhama, the conquest of, you got homework to do. The conquest of Constantinople. Your prophet said so. The Malhama is coming, the nuclear war. And after the nuclear war, the next thing to occur will be the conquest of Constantinople. That is why Mustafa Kemal changed the name and prohibited the use of the word Constantinople. And we say to Mustafa Kemal, get lost. If Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam referred to the city as Constantinople, then that's Sunnah. No Mustafa Kemal could tell me I cannot follow the Sunnah. Huh? The conquest of Constantinople makes military sense only in one context. And that is that the Russian Navy could pass through the Bosphorus and the Straits of Dardanelles into the Mediterranean Sea. So we can say from USM, we can say it today, that Russia will survive the nuclear war. NATO, you can put that in your pipe and smoke it. Russia will survive the nuclear war as a naval power. And the Russian Navy will pass through the Bosphorus and the Straits of Dardanelles into the Mediterranean. Because when we conquer Constantinople, NATO's back will be broken. What comes after the conquest of Constantinople? Khuruj of Dajjal. Khuruj of Dajjal. And after that comes Imam al-Mahdi, and then comes the return of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, but that's not our subject for today. I suggest to you the Surah Kahf of the Quran is the surah par excellence of Ilmu Akhirul Zaman. And if you have to spend the rest of your life studying it, you must do so. Finally, there's a shortcut to Nur. The Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, recite Surah Kahf on the day of Jum'ah, and you will get Nur from the samawat to the ard. And that Nur will stay with you until next Jum'ah. And he said, recite the first 10 ayat of Surah Kahf over Dajjal, and you'll be safe from his fitna. We pray that Allah may bless you all to be able to study and understand Surah Kahf of the Quran, that it may become a nur with which you'll be able to understand the world today. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ وَتُبْ عَلَيْنَا يَا مَوْلَانَا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ التَّوَّابُ الرَّحِيمُ بِرَحْمَتِكَ يَا أَرْحَمَ الرَّاحِمِينَ آمين.
Assalamualaikum. Sheikh, question is, according to your studies of the Jumajul, Dajjal, and the coming, could you just help an ignorant me to have a feel about what you think is the reality in the real world with relation to your study? For example, you said the conquer of Constantinople, the definition of what it really means, or the signs of coming of the Dajjal and how we guide ourselves to fully understand it, as well as what's the event coming, so that if we are as long as knowledgeable as you, and that is the case, that we at least give ourselves a chance to have a little bit of understanding of what is to come. Thank you.
I will need 1 week to answer you. I want to suggest that you read Jerusalem in the Quran, which might qualify as the textbook of Islamic eschatology. And after reading Jerusalem in the Quran, then you read these books on Surah Kahf. The key to the subject, and this is where the Iranians differ with me. I've been to Iran 3 times already. And Iran, the Shia ulama are very firm in their view that the key to ilmu akhiru zaman is Imam al-Mahdi. And I said to them, no, you're wrong. The key to ilmu akhiru zaman is Nabi Isa alayhi salam. So you've got to study the subject of Nabi Isa alayhi salam. particularly what happened at the time when they attempted to crucify him, which we don't have the time now to explain. And once it is established from the Quran, that Nabi Isa alayhi salam never experienced maut. So you're wrong when you translate the Quran to say he died. You're wrong. Be careful. The Quran does not say that he experienced maut. And since kullu nafsin za'ikatul maut, every soul must taste maut, the implication is that includes Nabi Isa alayhi salam. So wherever he is, he has to return. Then you come to the hadith about Dajjal, who will impersonate the true Messiah. And since the true Messiah has to rule the world from the holy state of Israel, from Jerusalem, it follows that Dajjal, if he is to convince the Jews that he is the true Messiah, he will have to establish his rule over all of mankind from Israel. Now you can understand history. In order for him to rule the world from Jerusalem and convince the Jews that he is the Messiah, number one, he has to liberate the Holy Land for the Jews. He did that already when the British army defeated the Ottoman army and took over Jerusalem. 19 what? 17, yes. Number two, he has to bring the Jews back to the Holy Land to reclaim it as their own. He did that. And he was assisted by a Zionist clone called the Soviet Union. He was assisted by a Zionist clone called the Soviet Union. You see what happens when you study the subject? You can reread history. Number three, he has to restore a state of Israel in the Holy Land. He's already done that, 1948. Number four, he has to cause that state of Israel to become the ruling state in the world. So Malaysia has to bend its knee. That's why you lost the first aircraft. That's why you lost the second aircraft. Because Malaysia will not bend its knee. I don't know how many more aircraft you're going to lose. Because Malaysia would not bend its knee. That's why you're losing the aircrafts. He has to establish his rule over the world. That's why they want the nuclear war. So that the two ruling powers in the world would knock out each other. So a post-nuclear world would be a world that Israel can more easily establish its rule over. This is how you're able to use this subject to understand and explain the world today. But I'll need a whole week to explain Dajjal to you, to explain Gog and Magog. Here is my book on Gog and Magog. Read it, study it, and then apply this knowledge to politics, apply it to economy, understand the banking system, apply it to monetary economics, understand Bretton Woods and the International Monetary Fund and the bogus paper money and the electronic money which is coming. Apply it to the feminist revolution and see what's happening to the world of women. There are so many other aspects of the modern age directly linked with eschatology. And our Prophet ﷺ has spoken extensively. There was a Sheikh who was speaking when I came. I couldn't understand the Bahasa, but whenever he quoted in Arabic, mashallah, he studied the subject. He was quoting for you several ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ on Akhirul Zaman. Next question.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. My name is Muhammad Yusuf. In your various lectures, you have criticized the banking system and also various financial institutions. My question is, what do you think of the Islamic banking and zakaful, in which we were told that it is Sharia compliance? And how do we escape from becoming users and supporters of these various financial institutions? That's all, Sheikh.
I have a booklet outside entitled Islam and the Future of Money, the gold dinar and silver dirham. Islam and the Future of Money. Unfortunately, none of us has complete knowledge, so my knowledge of the subject is constantly increasing. And since I wrote that book, there are now 2 more chapters to be added to it. The Bretton Woods monetary system, which gave us the US dollar as the international currency, was backed by gold. That the US government undertook a responsibility under international law to redeem US dollars for gold at the rate of $35 for 1 ounce of gold. So there was some integrity in the US dollar. But only governments could redeem, only governments, not people. That's bogus. 2 governments in the world recognized that this was bogus. 2 governments in the world stood up to defy them. One belonged to this region of the world, and the other was France, General Charles de Gaulle. He recognized that this was unfair, this was bogus, and he spoke in the French National Assembly against the monetary system. And that's why they took aim at him and they got him out of power. Who was the other government? Answer? Ahmad Sukarno. Yeah, you're too young to know it. But Ahmad Sukarno recognized that in order for money to have integrity, the Indonesian rupiah had to be redeemable in gold. Indonesia has now buried this knowledge below the ground. You can't find it. They don't want people to know it. But Ahmad Sukarno wanted the Indonesian rupiah to be redeemable in gold. That you could take the rupiah to any bank and you can get gold for it. If Ahmad Sukarno was successful, the Indonesian rupiah would not be in the disgraceful state where it is now. And my daughters would not be slaves. My daughters would not be slaves picking up your garbage. My daughters working for the salary of a slave in Lee Kuan Yew in Singapore. But who talks about that? So Sukarno took Indonesia out of the UN. May Allah bless him for that. People who have one eye can't understand it. But people who have 2 eyes would say, may Allah bless him for that. And Ahmad Sukarno took Indonesia out of the IMF. Yes, he did. Hugo Chavez is one of my heroes. He's my next door neighbor. I'm from Trinidad, he's from Venezuela. Hugo Chavez tried to take Venezuela out of the IMF, and could not succeed and died. But Sukarno took Indonesia out of the IMF. And that's why the CIA had to put their stuntman Suharto and remove Sukarno so that the CIA will rule over Indonesia. Two governments. Until eventually Dr. Mahathir, when he was about to retire, also took aim at the monetary system. Where are the scholars of Islam to tell Bank Negara? Where are the scholars of Islam? You'll have to answer on Judgment Day. You will have to answer on Judgment Day. Unless the scholars of Islam stand up and say this paper money is bogus and fraudulent and haram, your so-called Islamic banking will prosper. Is there any Islamic bank in the world which is arguing that we should bring back gold and silver as money? Dinar and dirham? None. If an Islamic bank calls for dinar and dirham, they'll shut it down. They'll shut it down. That's not my only criticism of Islamic banking, so-called Islamic banking. There are other criticisms as well. But we don't have the time today to go into that subject. But I suggest that you read my book, The Gold Dinar and Silver Dirham, Islam and the Future of Money, which is outside. It's also translated to Bahasa. Any more questions?
We have one question from the internet. I believe questions are also being opened through internet. The question is, ISIS are using gold and silver. What is Sheikh's view on this? Is it true as reported by media?
My answer is that even if Shaitan were to call for dinar and dirham, I'll commend him, but he still remains Shaitan.
I think allow them first.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi. Saya minta Tuan boleh jelaskan kepada Sheikh dalam sebab saya kalau saya cakap di broken English, okay? Saya Muhammad Fitri. Saya ingin tanya, apakah ada kaitan antara surah Al-Kahf, akhir zaman, demokrasi dan kesyirikan? Terima kasih.
Is there any relationship between surah Al-Kahf, demokrasi,
kesyirikan,
and syirik?
Is there any relationship between democracy and shirk in Akhir Zaman? Of course. Of course. Democracy has come as part of a package. The package includes the modern state, the modern republican state, the modern monarchy, the Khilafah state in Islam, and medieval Christian Europe, and the Hindu state. They all recognize something above as supreme. In the case of the Khilafah state, Allah is Al-Malik. Allah's sovereignty, Allah's authority, Allah's law is supreme. Dajjal came with the modern state. And the modern state around the world today, whether you have Islam as your state religion or not, whether you call yourself the Islamic Republic of Pakistan or the American Republic of Pakistan, the modern state says Allah is not Al-Malik. No. Who is Al-Malik? From the time you sign to accede to the Charter of the United Nations Organization. The Charter of the United Nations Organization makes it obligatory on you to submit to the supreme authority of the Security Council. Allah could tell you something else, but when the Security Council orders, you have to obey. Once you accede to the Charter of the United Nations, you're committing shirk. Iran had a revolution 35 years ago. I was in Iran last month to tell them that. 35 years now, and you still cannot recognize in Iran that you're in shirk by being a member of the United Nations organization. The modern state says Allah can make it haram, riba, but we can make it halal. Is it halal in Malaysia? My question to you, is it permissible in Malaysia to lend money on interest? How come you're so quiet? Yeah. Malaysia, you made it halal. You made it halal. Banks lend money on interest all the time, including Islamic banks doing it from the back door. Islamic banks are lending money on interest through the back door. The commercial banks are doing it through the front door, the Islamic bank is doing it through the back door. But they will not challenge me, no. No, they will not challenge me. So it's halal. Allah made it haram and you made it halal, all around the world today. If you make halal what Allah made haram, what sin is that called? Answer? It's called shirk. Where's the evidence? Surah Tawbah. Surah Tawbah. So yes, democracy is part of a package. Democracy is also part of a package called elections. And through elections you choose your government. But there's something called accountability. If you make a choice, you should be held accountable for your choice. Accountability. But Dajjal is very clever. In elections, there is no accountability. Because you make your choice anonymously. You see how clever he is? You vote secretly. Shame on you, shame on you, shame on you for accepting that. Shame on you, shame on you, shame on you for accepting that. Ours is different. We Muslims. Ours is different. That's yours. Ours is different. In ours, there's something called shura. And when you give your decision, you give your opinion, you give your vote, you are accountable. People know who you are and they know how you voted. They know how your opinion. Shura. So there's accountability in ours. There's no accountability in yours. So you can rig the election. That's why Scotland is still a part of England today.
Assalamualaikum. Sheikh. My name is Nur Hidayah. I have one simple question only. Nowadays, many Ustad advise us to recite and even memorize the first 10 ayah and last 10 ayah of Surah Kahf in order to prepare for the end-day and conference Dajjal. So what are your opinion about this? Is that good or what? That's all.
Yeah, it's not your ustaz who asked you to do that. It's Nabi Muhammad. It's Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. There's one hadith, the first 10, another hadith, the last 10, another hadith, the opening ayat of Surah Al-Kahf. Memorize them, particularly when you have to go to immigration. You memorize them so you can recite. This is meant to open up for you the whole surah. That the whole surah is important, to study the whole surah. But by all means, do memorize it. If you can memorize the whole of Surah Al-Kahf, that's even better.
There is one question.
My name is Hosein. Actually, my question is about similar to the question just now. Exactly, I would like to know the reason why Nabi Muhammad SAW asked us to recite this first and the first 10 words and the last 10 words. Exactly why is that? What is the meaning from that? And also, I know only one question, but I still want to ask another question. How we can instill all this feeling, especially to our generation? Y and Z right now, whereby they are growing up with a lot of gadgets, all those things. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Well, I understood part. What is the importance of reciting the first 10? And the answer is here in this book, so I don't have to answer you, okay? The second part of the question?
How to instill this kind of feeling among the teenagers?
Oh.
They've been diverted by the modern way of life.
Okay. How do we protect our teenagers from the traps, the fitna of Dajjal? Number one, are you ready? Turn off the television. Number two, take the television and throw it out of the house. I rented an apartment in Gombak, in KL. My landlord is Chinese and very nice man, very straightforward in his business dealings. And he kept his apartment very beautifully, mashallah. And he was so happy he's leaving for me a huge television in the sitting room, big like this, and another one in the master bedroom. So I called him. I said, thank you, take it out, take that one out. My Chinese landlord is looking at me with disbelief, he cannot understand. You don't want it? I said, no. Take it out. We don't watch television. No. I'm staying in a hotel, I never turn on the television set in the hotel, never. Because that is one of the most important instruments that Dajjal has for brainwashing you. Brainwashing you. Number two, the internet has its value. There's no question about it. My eschatology has now reached all over the world. Not even the Salafi can stop it now. And it's because of the internet. But then the internet is also filled with time bombs that you can easily be distracted and easily be misguided. So as parents, you've got to monitor your child's use of the internet. Shopping malls are dangerous places. Shopping malls are dangerous places. When a 15-year-old boy leaves Kampung and comes to KL and goes into a shopping mall, his eyes open big. And when he sees the half-naked woman, his mouth opens big. So the less you can have of visits to shopping malls, the better. If you have problems with your teenagers and you cannot solve them, you cannot get them under control, then solution is get out of the cities and go and find residence in kampung. The best kampung of all is the one where you cannot use a cell phone. The remote countryside. And there you have a chance of protecting your teenagers, yes.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Fazli Chairman. After listening to your explanation about Akhir Zaman, I just wonder what's going to be the impact to the countries in this region, like Malaysia and Indonesia, due to what's going to be the impact going to be for the countries, especially Malaysia. And another thing, in your opinion, another thing I want, another question is that Malaysia is a country. What is our role in Malaysia? What is our responsibility to prepare for the akhir zaman, like the wars and so on?
I understood the second question, but not the first.
This one, the impact of the Dajjal effect to Malaysia.
What is Dajjal's plan for Malaysia?
Yeah, yeah. The effect.
Okay. Actually, Malaysia is in great danger. And the loss of the 2 aircraft should be a wake-up call. Malaysia is in great danger. Why? Because the nuclear war is around the corner. Israel is going to step out from behind the hijab because Israel has to replace the United States as the ruling state in the world. And from the time, for example, Israel launches an attack on Pakistan's nuclear plants, guess what's going to happen in this part of the world? We had a taste of it in 1990 when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. Many of you may not have been alive in 1990. When Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and all the Malay, all of them, including those who were in the cabinet, all the Malay were in support of Saddam Hussein. None were supporting Kuwait. Because the Malay sentiment in their hearts, they could recognize who was the oppressor and who was the oppressed. So when Israel steps out from behind the hijab and starts to launch her wars, Muslim sentiment in this part of the world is going to be inflamed. No government will be able to control, none, the Muslim people of this region, particularly in Indonesia. And if Singapore does not respond, if Singapore does nothing, then goodbye Singapore. Goodbye Singapore. Because Lee Kuan Yew in his profound foolishness, I mean, this is not just simple foolishness, this is profound foolishness on the part of the founder of Singapore. Not to recognize that Singapore is a little island in a sea of Islam. And to adopt a policy of becoming little Israel, I mean, that's a PhD in foolishness. That's what Singapore is, little Israel. So from the time Israel steps out from behind the hijab, there's going to be such a backlash against Singapore that no Singaporean will be able to come over to Johor with the hope of returning home alive. You're not sure? Because no government will be able to control the people. No. Well, then how is Singapore going to survive? The little island cannot be defended. No, it cannot be defended. Not possible. The Malaysian armed forces probably already know this. I'm not saying anything new. That the only way that Singapore can possibly survive is to get more space. And so one can expect some rash move on the part of Singapore at the expense of either Malaysia or Indonesia, more likely Malaysia. But any such move on the part of Singapore will trigger racial war, race war in this part of the world. So you're sitting on a gunpowder at this moment. You're sitting on gunpowder at this moment. And It is eschatology, the study of eschatology, that will help a government in Malaysia, and the government in Indonesia to prepare for what is to come. I don't think I should speak any more than what I've just said.
I think we give last question.
Assalamualaikum, Sheikh. My name is Ismail Wanda. My question is actually related to Dajjal. How actually describe Dajjal? Is it a human like us, or animal, or is it a superpower like Israel? Thank you, Sheikh.
Question is Dajjal a human being, or is he an animal, or what is he? How do we describe him? Were you here for the whole lecture, or did you come late? Because I did mention, did I not? I did mention that Dajjal is going to appear in human form. Dajjal will appear in human form. When he does so, he will be a Jew. He will be a young man. He'll be powerfully built. He'll have the curls of the Orthodox Jews. I did say that, did I not? That, of course, is not the full answer, but it's too complex a subject for me to go beyond that. So you should be suffice with that, okay? Make dua that I can write my book on Dajjal, where you'll get a more comprehensive answer than that.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Tanka Ikhwan, and I wanted to ask you, what is your advice to us about the money? Because technically we are living in a money world, and everybody is like very obsessed about money. We cannot live without money, and how we educate even our parents that say so obsessed about money. But we here, you yourself don't really care about money. This is a second value. How do you advise the people around us say that money is not that important? There is other thing that is important. Please advise me on this.
The question is, how do we explain to our parents, how do we explain to the society that money is not everything, that there are things in life that money cannot buy? It is Allah who guides the heart to Him. You cannot do it. All that you can do is to warn, nothing more. And when you warn, you must call people with wisdom, and do it in a nice and graceful way. Once you have done that, وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغِ, I have done my duty. I have guided you, I have warned you about the dangers of the dunya. And if you choose to follow that path, then I have to accept and not seek to oppress you. That's your choice.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Johari Rahmani. I have one question regarding ISIS. I read a lot of from the net, a lot of things shows a good thing. But based on your explanation just now in your lecture that ISIS is a bogus, so can you explain further? Thank you.
Question. Who provides them with state-of-the-art weapons? The most sophisticated weaponry. Do they have the technology themselves? Do I live in dreamland? Do they have the manufacturing plants? Who provides them with all these weapons? Number two, who is financing them? They're being paid $1,000 a day to go and fight? Where's the money coming from? My answer is that it's the same force at work that recruited them in Libya and sent the weapons into Benghazi. I don't want to speak anymore about how the weapons reached Benghazi. The Turkish government has a lot to answer for to Allah on Judgment Day. This bogus Turkish government, pretending to be Islamic. And they recruited fighters from different parts of the world, paying them money. These are mercenaries, not mujahideen, mercenaries. They're fighting for money. Okay? And they show no Islamic etiquette, Islamic rules of warfare. In the case of Tripoli, they waited until Ramadan. They waited until people have fasted for the whole day. And now it is the time to break the fast. And everybody lay down their weapons to sit down over the iftar to eat. And these wicked, wicked, wicked people who say they are Mujahideen launched their attack at that time and killed maybe 1,000, 2,000 people in order to take Tripoli. They can't be Muslims. Their place is in Jahannam. The same people who did that in Libya, in consequence of which Libya is now, it's a failed state, it's finished. It's rubbish, that's what Libya is today, rubbish. And NATO is in charge in Libya. So when the attack on Egypt takes place, Israel will attack from one side and NATO will attack from the other side. The same people are also there in Syria. Who's providing them the weapons? Turkey is doing it. Turkey is a member of NATO. That's prohibited by the Quran. Prohibited by the Quran. Turkey is providing the weapons. Saudi Arabia. The Prophet ﷺ pointed to the east, to Najd. And he said, Najd is Qarnu Shaitan. Qarnu Shaitan. The age of Satan, not the horn, the age. It is Qarnu Shaitan who is behind ISIS today. Not just the CIA, not just the Mossad. It is Qarnu Shaitan. Providing the weapons, providing the financing, doing all the strategic thinking for ISIS. But if you don't want to believe me, you can wait until Judgment Day and you'll see for yourself. But on that time, don't ask for excuse. On Judgment Day, no, too late at that time. If you can't see now, man kana fi hadhihi a'ama فَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ أَعْمَى وَأَضَلَّ السَّبِيلِ. Whosoever is blind here will be blind there as well and more misguided. That is the Quran.
I think
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I really need your opinion on this. The Jajah has come up with so many tools to disalign the world Muslim. And one of the tools are riba and instigation all over the world. But I believe food is also. We eat food every day, and we need to eat clean food. I want to know how bad Monsanto of America going global and even into Malaysia with its GMO food. Thank you. That's my question.
Yes, there is a hint of this in Surah Al-Kahf, that food is going to be a problem in Akhir Zaman. Remember, the young man slept for 300 years. When you wake up after 300 years, you're going to be hungry. So they send one to get some food, And they gave him instruction, فَلْيَنْظُرْ أَيُّهَا أَذْكَى طَعَامٍ. Go search for that food which is purest. That is what we have to do today. Food today is increasingly corrupted and contaminated. And your baby, for the sisters here, my daughters here, be careful. If you provide your babies with the milk that they have corrupted and contaminated with hormone injections, then a baby boy will grow up feminine. It's not that Allah created him that way. I have a case now in KL. The mother is spending so much money, she doesn't know what to do. Little boy is behaving like a girl. He has all the mannerisms of a girl. He's talking like a girl. It's hell for the mother. And the baby girl will grow up like a tomboy. And you don't know what to do with this girl. She's not growing up like a girl. She's growing up like a boy. She's behaving like a boy. And you, the mother, you have the problem more than the father. He's outside working all day. So you've got to be very careful about food, because they're putting into the food that is going to contaminate and corrupt the food and create problems for you tomorrow. That was the question on food. But if I may be allowed to take on one more subject about Dajjal. It's not going to make me popular, but I'm not here for popularity. In the Quran, Allah is plain and clear. Allah is plain and clear in the Quran that He created men to have several wives. Oh yes. He created men to have several wives. And the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is to have several wives. And so too the companions of the Prophet ﷺ. And if men are to have several wives, it follows that Allah must have created more women than men. You cannot have men having several wives and yet create same amount of men as women. So forget about the official statistics. Forget about it. There'll always be more women than men in the world. Dajjal it is who has come along. And when you study ilmu akhir zaman, then you will understand the strategy. And brainwashed, all of us, including the scholars of Islam, brainwashed us all that good men, decent men, respectable men, men who are models of conduct, are men who have only one wife. And when a man takes a second or a third wife, like your grandfather did and your great-grandfather did, something is wrong with him. You despise him. You don't want to marry a man who already has a wife. No. People are going to laugh at you to be a second wife. This is the attack of Dajjal. This is the attack of Dajjal. And so, if you are to earn Allah's blessings, you must stand up and defy Dajjal. If you have the means to do so and you can take a second wife, go ahead and do it. Imran Hosein is speaking. Go ahead and do it. But if you cannot be a good husband to your first wife, you cannot be a good husband to your second. No. First be a good husband to your first wife. Then you can be a good husband to the second and the third. You don't have to be rich to have several wives. No. In many parts of the world today, there are poor people in the villages who have several wives. But it is something pleasing to Allah when you act in accordance with Allah's guidance. This is part of the strategy of Dajjal. So as men have only one wife, there'll always be a surplus of women out there who cannot find a husband. That's a recipe for disaster. Rashid, go ahead.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Abdul Hadi. My question is a very short one. My question is, what is your view on Iran? Are they our ally in this akhir zaman? That's all. Thank you.
My view of jihad?
On Iran.
I am about to deliver a lecture on the subject. The master plan, Dajjal's master plan for Akhiru Zaman is to bring about Shia-Sunni civil war in Islam. They tried it when Saddam Hussein attacked Iran. And the war lasted for 8 years. They were hoping that it would become a Shia-Sunni civil war in Islam, but it did not. They tried it again in Syria to make it a Shia-Sunni war in Syria. They didn't succeed. And now they're trying it with ISIS to get Shia-Sunni civil war in Islam. If they succeed in fomenting Shia-Sunni civil war in Islam, goodbye Pakistan. Goodbye to Pakistan. Pakistan cannot survive. They want Pakistan to collapse because Pakistan is the only Muslim country today with nuclear weapons. And in order to avoid a frontal attack on Pakistan and nuclear war, it would be better if they can get Pakistan to collapse from inside with civil war. So the Protestant Islam, the Salafi view, is today to beat the drums of war against the Shia. That's what they're doing. Beating the drums of war against the Shia. This is why I travel to Iran again and again, to try to build solidarity with the Shia ulama. And I was just in Iran 3 weeks ago, and I said, we've got to sit down and come to some common understanding. To inform the Sunni world that you cannot say that the Shia are kuffar. That's rubbish. That's rubbish. That's schoolboy methodology. The Shia are kuffar. In order for you to say that they are kuffar, you have to declare a fatwa. The fatwa has to be issued by someone of authority, someone with knowledge. And it has to be a document. And that document has to get ijma', consensus. That has never happened in history. No. And no one has ever prevented the Shia from performing the Hajj. If I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. How come no one in the history of Islam have prevented the Shia from performing the Hajj? How do you explain that? No ijma'. And now you come to tell Imran Hosein they're kuffar? That's schoolboy stuff, that's not scholarship. So we have to get this into the head of the Sunni. That the Shia, the Ithna Ashari, they are Muslims. And we also have to get it into the heads of the Shia. That the Quran is the supreme authority in Islam, not the Hadith, the Quran. You cannot divide the Ummah based on Hadith. No. Is there anything in the Quran which states plainly and clearly that succession to leadership in Islam is divinely ordained and restricted to the house of the Prophet ﷺ? No, the Quran does not establish that. That's from the hadith, not the Quran. And you cannot establish a belief system only on the hadith. It has to be supported by the Quran. And so you should stop. Stop it. Stop ever saying that Abu Bakr Siddiq and Umar Farooq and Uthman Ghani, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, that they were usurpers. That is a sinful thing to do. That's nonsense. It's false. Stop it. You cannot establish a belief system based on hadith, unsupported by the Quran. So we've got to bridge the divide, the Shia-Sunni divide, on these two issues. And hopefully, I pray that Allah may help us that we can prevent Shia-Sunni civil war in Islam.
So one more last question you want to ask. The last one. I think this for limited time.
Okay, thank you very much. Assalamualaikum, Sheikh. I'm from Ipoh, Perak. Just now in your earlier discussion, you have mentioned about how Singapore can survive, okay? And you did mention about Singapore to survive is to get more space, and they have to expand the space, and they have to expand the survival even up to Malaysia, that will trigger a racial war. So as a Malaysian, I'm worried about that. And my question to you is that, do these Singaporean politicians, they are eyeing on Malaysia, especially during our next general election? I'm sorry, I have to, involve politics here. As we know that PAP is a party which is similar to the DAP in Malaysia, and I'm a supporter from PAS, okay? And we are now in one big combination of what we call as Pakatan Rakyat. So if really they have their intention to get Malaysia during the general election through DAP, so we are in trouble. But having to say that, what President PAS, Datuk Haji Hadi Awang, has decided that we are must still in this Pakatan Rakyat. So we are, kita pengikut dan kita just ikut saja apa yang ditentukanlah. So dengan harapan dan dengan doa tak ada yang akan terjadi. Dan saya nak tanya juga, mungkin boleh, perjuangan itu adalah sunnatullah, okay? So mungkin lepas daripada ini kita terpaksa berjuang lagi melawan mereka untuk mendapatkan negara Islam di Malaysia. Sorry, terpaksa involve politik. Mungkin boleh translate apa sebenarnya yang
Yes. Okay. Terima kasih. The last question. So how Singapore will expand to Malaysia, to control Malaysia? Is there any future agenda that you see?
I should restrict, I was very guarded in my answer to you. And I should restrict my comments to what I have said, nothing more than that. I don't know the names of the political parties. No? I don't know the names of the political parties in Malaysia and in Singapore. I know PAS, yeah. I don't think PAS knows me, but I know PAS. So, I don't have the time really to study local politics. I don't have the time. My time is devoted to the big problems, the big issues around the world. So your local ulama are the ones who should be guiding you on the question you have just asked. All I have to say is Singapore is lost, is finished. From the time Israel steps out from behind her hijab, there's no way Singapore can survive unless Singapore does something to try to enhance its security. What is Singapore likely to do? I believe it's going to be something rash. And if it does that, it's going to trigger off racial war. So we've got to prepare for it.